Hi, this is Master Bamboo. Today, we're going to cover the Mechanic Master MC14 ITX case. To remove all the outer panels, all you have to do is to remove the 4 screws at the top, and the rest panels will be able to slide off just by hands, which is one of the firsts from Mechanic Master cases. The case design has what we call pretty typical A4 design, which supports a SFX power supply and a mini ITX motherboard on the side. On the bottom of the case, it also supports a 3.5 and a 2.5 hard drive. Moving to the front, there is also another 2.5 hard drive slot if needed. The top side supports 2 120mm fans or an all-in-one 240 water cooler. The extension cable for the PCIe is 185mm long, and the back panel can be swapped for additional clearance if needed for the graphics. But the CPU cooler space will be compressed if you decide to swap to a 3-slot graphic card. The front panel I/O has 2 Type-A USB 3.0 ports and a power switch. For the power supply, we went with the Seasonic's newest addition to their SFX family. The power supply is all white, and the modular cable came with it are all white as well. To go with the color theme, we went with a Waifu card came from Yeston. The Intel 10700K is a great option for this build. The CPU cooler has the same Waifu theme, and it's made by ID Cooling. It is recommended to have the CPU, RAM, and your NVMe installed beforehand. The motherboard module installation is pretty standard. The fan needs to be slided in from the side, and if you have an all-in-one cooler, you might want to install the water block before you secure the second fan. It is also easy to drop the screws onto motherboard, so make sure you pick up all of the screws before the final assembly. The cabling can be hard for this case, so you might want to get that out of the way before you install the power supply. If you have hard drives, you might want to install the CPU cables before you put the hard drives in. The power supply mounting can be removed by just 2 screws. Then the power supply itself should be installed right before your graphic cards. If all goes well, your graphic card goes into place and get the cables out of the way, you're ready to go. The Intel 10700K was overclocked to 5.0 GHz through all cores. The first test is using the Final Fantasy XIV Online benchmark tool, which utilized the same engine that the game runs. The resolution was set to 1080p and the graphics options are set to maximum. The temperature looks fantastic within this test, but the AMD 6700 XT did not perform as well as our last test, which used NVIDIA's 3060 Ti graphic card. The core temperature for the graphic card stayed around 50 degrees and the CPU stayed around 50 degrees as well, which is great news for this case. Our second test is using the Biohazard, which is Resident Evil 6 benchmark tool. With an older game, the Navi 22 performed pretty well, but the final result or the benchmark score was only half of what we had last time in our 3060 Ti, which is very puzzling. It almost felt like the graphic card wasn't even trying to get the highest FPS available, so the score is obviously shows. So this is a very mixed test, which is pretty weird. And finally, the third test is using the 3D Mark Time Spy benchmark tool, which utilized the DirectX 12. Within this test, the 6700 XT outperformed the 3060 Ti, which the result agrees with the mainstream reviews. The core temperature for the graphic card is a little bit higher within this test, and the CPU test did not reveal any thermal throttling, so the temperature is good to go. The final test was using the game called Deliver Us the Moon for Tuna. I tested the game with VSync both enabled or disabled. The game is rather interesting to run the benchmarks on. The core temperature for the graphic card can reach to 65 degrees when the VSync is off, which utilizes the maximum FPS available. But when VSync gets turned back on, the case just runs so quietly that you won't even notice the fans are running. It is also great to check the thermals as well. During our test, the bottom of the case is cold while the ventilation ports are rather warm, so that's a good sign. The test results are also available as screenshots for you. Now this is Master Bamboo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.